name is Dave Regier, and this is the second half of my travel report on Ireland. And in the first video I showed scenes from Dublin, and I had a couple actors read a couple excerpts from James Joyce's Ulysses, which took place in Dublin. And so if you haven't seen that video, go back and see that. And in this video what I want to do is start off in Belfast, and I'll look primarily at the whole issue of the Troubles that took place there 25 years ago or so. And then I join a tour group and we go to other places in Northern Ireland and the Republic and some of the tourist sites there. So anyway, sit back and enjoy a little bit more about Ireland. So when I knew that I'd be going to Belfast, I decided that one of the things I wanted to do was to learn more about the Troubles that occurred there and was prominent in the news in the 1970s, 80s and 90s. And really terrible things were happening. There was terrorism, terrorist acts taking place almost on a daily basis, and car bombings and shootings and hijackings, and people were dying in jail from hunger strikes, and it was just a tremendous, awful conflict that went on for a long time. And so I wanted to just sort of try and have a better understanding of that and see if there's anything to learn in today's world around what they went through. So the first thing that I did was I scheduled a black cab tour, which is a tour where a fellow picks you up in one of these London black cabs, and he'll tour you around the different places where this conflict took place, in Falls Road, Shankill Road, and the Peace Wall, and so on. And so one morning then this fella came and picked me up in the black cab, and the first question he asked was, so what do you know about the Troubles? And so I said, well, I know what I learned from the news. And he says, well, if that's all you know is what you got from the news, you don't know anything. And so he said, well, let me tell you what really happened. And so then for the next 90 minutes, I got a total earful on the real scoop on what happened there. And so he said the first thing you need to know is some history about what happened. And so what I'm going to do is give you a short Cole's Notes version of the history leading up to the conflict, and so that'll be a little bit of background. So some of the history, as I came to understand it, sort of goes as the following. And the first inhabitants of Ireland, the islands of Ireland, were Celts, as in Celtic people. And so they lived there and had their own traditions and religion, and they were pagan people up until about the 4th century AD, when monks from Europe went to Ireland and established monasteries. And these were centers of learning and commerce and literature and all these kinds of things. And so then they were Catholic, and so essentially the whole country adopted Christianity, i.e. Catholicism. And so that went on for some time, and the country flourished and did well. Up until about the 7th century, when the Vikings invaded Ireland, and they were then the first of different foreign invaders to the lands, and they were there for some time and were eventually defeated. And then the Anglo-Normans were the next to come and invade, and then following that was the British, who became then the long-term foreign occupiers of the land. And so the British remained as the colonial power governing Ireland right up until the end of the 20th century, really. And so, but back in the 17th century, King Henry VIII was the king, and by this time the royalty in England had abandoned the Catholic Church and were now Protestant. And so then King Henry VIII declared that all of the Catholic monasteries in Ireland should be declared not monasteries and their property confiscated. and the people who lived there would become serfs and made to work there and so on. And so then that was all of that helped to set the stage for this major conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants. And this was also the time that Oliver Cromwell went on a rampage and confiscated and slaughtered people and captured a lot of these monasteries. And so that was going on also. And then on top of that, in 1690, then the British Parliament passed laws called the Boyne Penal Laws, which made it against the law for a Catholic person to own property or have education or participate in public service or any of these kind of things. And the effort being to abolish Catholicism outright, and of course that didn't work. And so then, and over the next couple of centuries, various attempts were made to establish independent rule from Britain, but that didn't happen until 1914, I think it is, where there was a small war of independence, and then at that time they signed an agreement with Britain that said that Ireland could have home rule and that the British would no longer rule. And the minor problem with that was that in Northern Ireland, around Belfast, there was, by this time, a large Protestant population there. And they were afraid that if they were part of a country that was ruled by the Catholics, that they might well be under severe retribution measures, given everything else that happened. So they broke off and had partition with south part of Ireland, and they formed Northern Ireland, and the south part of Ireland became the Republic of Ireland. And following partition in Northern Ireland, the Catholics up there still felt that they were not equal members of society and had all their rights restored the way they wanted. And so in 1969, there was a demonstration in Belfast where violence erupted, and that became then the start of terrorist tactics on both sides, the Irish and the Protestant, and the IRA being on one side and Ulster forces being on the other. And there was a long cycle of violence and terrorist activity that took place, and shootings and car bombings and Catholic protesters who were jailed went on hunger strikes in the jail, and Bobby Sands was a prominent name of those, and he died in jail just weeks after he had been voted to be an MP in Parliament. And so then this whole cycle of violence and terrorism went on until Good Friday of 1998. That's almost 30 years. And at that time they signed in the Good Friday Agreement, which both sides came together and said, enough is enough. We can't keep on killing each other. And so they signed this agreement, and that is now 25 years, we're 25 years hence, and the violence has by and large subsided, and there are still deep tension between the Catholics and Protestants, and I'll talk more about that when I show the pictures of the peace wall and so on. But anyway, that was in a sense good resolution to a long-standing and entrenched conflict between two peoples. And so it goes to show that when you have such a long-standing conflict, it can be resolved if the parties agree to it. So that's what happened in this case. So what I'll do now is show some pictures of the Troubles area, and some of this was shot on the tour with the guide, but most of it was shot on the following day when I did my own walking tour of the two areas, the Catholic area and the Protestant area. And so one of the things you commonly see is paintings on the gable end of houses depicting different things, and then the walls, there's a peace wall and other walls, and they all have graffiti and paintings and so on them. So anyway, have a look. those are some of the pictures from the Troubles area on the buildings and fences, and some of those are signs that indicate the marking of territory for different groups that are there, and also common are pictures in commemoration of people who died, and also just regular political statements showing solidarity for your group. Couple of pictures coming up are pictures of gates in the wall, and these gates are open during the daytime, but they lock them at night because there's just not enough trust between the two sides to risk having those gates open and someone coming across in the cover of darkness and causing problems. And these are a couple pictures of the side streets in the area, and it's hard to imagine that these tidy and orderly streets were the site of such violence over such a long period of time. On my first night in Belfast, I stumbled upon a demonstration in support of Palestine, and it's also common to see artwork on the walls and so on in support of Palestinians, and it seems that the Irish Catholics anyway feel some shared historical experiences of being colonized and being under the domination of a foreign power. And commentators in Ireland are suggesting that what the Middle East needs is a Belfast moment where all sides can come together and decide to put down their arms and find some way that they can live next to each other. And just to show that Belfast is not just about the Troubles, here are a couple pictures from the city. And what you see here is Belfast City Hall, and it has beautiful stained glass windows. And then there's a couple images and video from the area around the Titanic Museum, which everybody says is a must-see, which I didn't see, but maybe next time. Anyway, that's it for this Belfast part of the video. I've joined the tour group now, and we're heading north of Belfast along this rather nice scenic coastal road. So I'm in Northern Ireland now, and we're about to see the interesting stone formation at the north of the island. And they've been having big storms here lately, so the weather's been pretty dodgy, but it's not too bad today. And that's actually Scotland you can see behind me there. And so it's the second day of our tour, so we'll carry on. arrived at the Giant's Causeway site, and it's the place that has these tall stone columns that were apparently formed 40 million years ago from a volcano. And anyway, here are some pictures from the site. And now we're back on the road again, and the next couple of pictures will be of the beech trees that are scenes from the Game of Thrones movie. And then after that we roll into Galway, and a couple of pictures from there, and a couple of selfies of me with the Galway girl, and another one with me on the bench with Oscar Wilde and another fellow called Edward Wilde. I can't say I know who he is, but anyway, there it is. And now we're back in the country, and what you see here is a peat bog, and what they do is they cut peat into these squares that you see there, let them dry in the sun, and then they use that as fuel in the fireplace in the wintertime. And so that's going to be a new bucket list item, to sit by a fireplace burning peat and maybe drinking some whiskey, but that'll be for next time. And the next place we come to is a place called Kylemore Abbey. And this is a huge estate of 1,000 acres or so, and it's run by Benedictine monks from Belgium. And so what they have is a fully functioning farm and a big operation, and there's a big abbey that you'll see pictures of, and a Gothic church and tea house and big rambling estate. And so we spent a full afternoon sort of exploring this quite interesting site. These are a couple pictures from the city of Killarney, and it's evening time, so we had a little walkabout before going to a pub for some music and drinks.
With her hair thrown over her shoulder, tied up with a black velvet band. Her eyes shone like diamonds. You think she was queen of the land. With her hair thrown over her shoulder, tied up with a black velvet band. Anyway, thank you so much.
On this day, we set out to explore a couple castles, and this first one is called Dungair Castle, and then there's another one called Ross Castle, and Ross Castle apparently was one of the last castles that Oliver Cromwell captured in the mid-1600s when he went through this area, causing mayhem and slaughtering people and stealing property, all in the name of the king back home. So we'll go and check out these places. Our next stop was the Cliffs of Moher, which is a must-see place in Ireland. And it seems there are a lot of cliffs around the coast of Ireland, but anyway, these are highly impressive, and it was nice to get out for a nice big long walk in the country there. What you see here is a monument to Saint Brendan, and Saint Brendan was an Irish monk from around about the period of 400 AD, and he and his three compatriots in that little ship that you see depicted there, they sailed from Galway to North America and back, and so discovered North America about 1,000 years before Christopher Columbus did. And it's said that when Christopher Columbus sailed to the New World, he stopped at Galway to pay respect to Saint Brendan and say that he was going to follow in his path. So there's a little bit of revisionist history for you. One day we went to a sheep farm, and we saw a demonstration on how they use border collies to herd sheep. And so it was a cold and windy, rainy day, but the dogs and the sheep and the handlers all performed admirably, so it was a very good demonstration. And as we were leaving, another van was pulling up, so I think that those sheep and the dogs are going to have to go through that same routine one more time, so the day wasn't over for them, but anyway, very interesting.
Border collies have been used for the rounding up of sheep for up to 800 years. That's a long time.
Here we are in the city of Cork, and it's the last stop on this intrepid tour that I'm on before heading on to Dublin. And as has been the case with just about every place we went to, we had far too little time to really get a feel for the place beyond just sort of whet your appetite for it. But I can say that Ireland is a highly interesting and congenial place to travel to, and with friendly people and good food and culture and the Guinness beer and the scenery and history, it all makes for a highly interesting place to visit. So I'll see if I make a return trip sometime. But anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and happy trails to all of you. Thanks. Bye.